This is a lecture from OpenTuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
This lecture is on Chapter 2 and it's target costing. And as you have seen in my previous lectures on activity-based costing, I'm not actually going to read the notes to you word for word. That would be ridiculous. Let me explain what's happening by going straight into examples. And then we'll have the discussion that goes with it. And I think you'll find I hope you'll find the actual arithmetic very straightforward. So this could never be an enormous question on its own. But it is an important area, and it's a modern area, and it's a very common area. But let me explain what I mean with example 1. Packard plc are considering whether or not to launch a new product. Sales department have determined the realistic selling price will be $20 a unit, with a requirement that all products generate a gross profit of 40% of selling price. Well, the steps that are involved in target costing are this. First of all, the first thing we do is we determine a realistic selling price. So forget costs completely for the moment. I've got a new product I'm going to launch. We look to see what a realistic price will be, what price people are likely to be prepared to pay. We'll need research, we'll have the sales department involved, we'll look to see if there are similar products. If similar products exist and are being sold at 20, then maybe we'll have to sell at 20. Maybe our product's going to be better, we can charge more, or it's not going to be as good, we'll have to charge less. But we get the sales department to determine how much they think we're going to be able to sell it for. And of course, in this question, it's $20 per unit. We then decide what our objective is. How much profit do we want to make? Well, that's up to the individual company. There's no rule here. In an exam, you'd obviously have to be told. But it says in example 1, they have a requirement that all products generate a gross profit of 40% of selling price. So fine. We are going to launch this new product. We want to make sure it gives us 40% of selling price. And of course, what's that? 40%? Selling price is 20. And so we need this product to make a profit of $8. What we then do is we put the two together and we determine the maximum cost to achieve that profit. And so here, if we're going to be selling it at 20, if we want a profit of 8, then surely the maximum cost will have to be $12 per unit if we're going to make that profit. And that 12 is the target cost. Now, arithmetically, I've finished example 1, but let me carry on to show you how this is used and what the importance of it is. Remember, we haven't started making this product yet. It's a new product. But we've decided if we're going to sell it and achieve what we want to achieve, then we're going to have to be able to make it for $12 a unit or less. And so what we then do is calculate or estimate the actual cost We do our costings. Maybe we'll use activity-based costing, as I went through in the previous lecture. But we do our costings and estimate what the cost per unit is going to be. If it's less than $12, great. We can go ahead, we'll make the profit we want, no problem. But suppose it's higher. Suppose I estimate the actual cost, and suppose I get $15. And I invented that. I invented a figure just to explain how we use target costing. So I reckon it's going to cost 15. Well, what are we going to do? It's costing more than it should have done. We say that we've got a cost gap. We think it'll cost 15, it should only cost 12, and so we've got a cost gap of $3. And then we look for ways of removing that cost gap. Look for ways of removing the cost gap and getting the cost down to the $12. Now, I'll discuss separately how you might go about doing that. I can't say everything at once, obviously, but getting the actual target cost, we just follow the instructions. But it is rather important, I will say more later, about what we do with it. Is here, if our cost is more than the 12, we need to find ways of removing the cost if we're going to get the profit we want. Now, I say, we'll have more discussion later. Let's do a bit more arithmetic. Just one thing to be careful of before I look at example 2. They can give you a very similar question to example 1, but change the wording slightly. Suppose I told you that we had a realistic selling price of, let's say, 50, and our profit objective, we want a profit of 25% of cost. So it's very similar, but there is that change of wording. Last time we wanted the profit to be, 40% of selling price, and that would be easy. Here we want the profit to be 25% of the cost. Now, this is something you should be able to cope with no problem because of paper F2, but just for everybody's benefit, think about this. If the cost was, let's say, 100, we don't know what it is, but if it's 100, the profit would have to be 25%, which is 25, and therefore the selling price would be 125. Or looking at it the other way round, for every 125 selling price, the profit is 25. Well, our selling price is 50, so the profit we need, it's 25 for every 125. So we would need a profit of $10. And now, of course, it's easy. What would be the maximum cost, the target cost? Selling price was 50, we want a profit of 10, the target cost would be 40. And of course it does work. Remember, the objective was that the profit is 25% of cost. If cost is 40, 25% is 10. That's it. So I'm just saying be careful and read carefully. When they give it you like this, have they given you the profit as a percent of selling price, as in example 1? Or have they given it as a percent of cost, as I just did in that invented example. All right, well, almost certainly any target costing, you'll get the profit in one of those two ways, percent of selling price, percent of cost. Just to be safe, though, look at example 2, which does it slightly differently. We're about to launch a new product on which we require a pre-tax. Now, I shouldn't have used abbreviation. It's something we discuss later. Again, ROI was mentioned in F2, but it means return on investment. So our target here is that we get a return on the investment of 30% a year. The buildings and equipment needed, so the investment we'll need, is 5 million. And again, we've had our sales department do work, and they think we'll sell 40,000 units a year at a selling price of £67.50. Well, we can get the same answer several ways. I'm not going to do it several ways, that's up to you. But let's have a look. First of all, the total revenue, total sales that we think we're going to get, 40,000, 67.50 a unit. So we think we'll earn £2.7 million. The profit per year, obviously. The profit we require it says we want a return on investment of 30%. The investment was 5 million. So we want a profit of 1.5 million a year. And therefore, what's the total cost we can afford? Is 1.2 million. Now that's the total, but we want the target cost always per unit. And so the target cost per unit total 1.2 million. How many units is it? 40,000. Therefore, it's $30. So I say it's less likely to be given it that way, but it could be given anyway. It's obviously up to the business to decide on how to get the target. But there's the target cost. We've got to make sure, or try and make sure, that we can actually produce the product at a cost of less than $30. Well, I said, and I hope the arithmetic was pretty straightforward. But it's very popular, as MCQs in particular. I'll break there, but I'm not finished there, because as I said several times in the previous lecture on activity-based, just as important for the exam is being able to prove that you understand what target costing is, and how we might use it, and problems and whatever. So I'll discuss all that in the next lecture.